Welcome to Friday at 4, production podcast of VDC TV, weekly affairs, public affairs podcast. I'm your co-host, Guy Page, here in the 802 Scoop studio on Main Street in Barre, with our social media director, Paul Bean, and a reporter, Mike Belosky. Welcome, Mike.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah. And off camera, but with us, is managing editor Tim Page. So the gang's all here. The four reporters of the Vermont Daily Chronicle are all here. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about today in our working it into 1 hour. Paul, but first thing, I wanted to please ask you to let people know how they can comment and how they can subscribe.
Absolutely, Guy. I'm happy to do that. First and foremost, folks, if there's any tech issues that you can see or you can hear, don't be afraid to let us know. I won't get too upset, and I don't think Guy will either. Just we're actually happy to know. But if you want to contribute to the conversation or you want to be a part of it, you can comment in. There's a chat below if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on really anywhere. It's just like commenting on anything. You just got to type in your comments and let us know what you think. Please be sure to hit that reshare button, like button, subscribe. We've had some growth in 2024, and we want to continue that. So if you're somebody who supports free speech in Vermont, we hope you support our show. So one of the easiest things you can do is click that like button. So that's all from me, Guy, on that.
Great. Thank you, Paul. So, Paul, I wanted to let you know I had lunch today with a young conservative and who had been pretty much unplugged from all Vermont news media until he was playing around in Facebook and he comes across this reel. And it's a Creamy Cast reel. And it was one of your many, and he went, wow, wow, what is this? And he saw another one, found out about the Chronicle, watched Friday at 4, and he's now a sustaining subscriber, regular reader. He's referring us to other people. And so it's all because of the wonder of this whole social media thing and all the video work you're doing.
Who was it, Guy?
Nope.
I can't tell you.
You can't share, can you?
But
Well, how do I know it's real? No, just kidding.
Well, it is. So just to me, it was like, wow, Paul's been telling me that we're going to be attracting young viewers and readers with this. And wow, you are very right.
Yay.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I would like to think that some of the work we've been doing has worked, Guy. I mean, we've had I would say a positive response since being back in the building. And I know we got a lot to talk about today, but maybe we could start right there. What do you think?
Sure. There's three things we're going to be talking about today. Well, who knows what we're going to end up talking about. But the three scheduled things we have, the first, the LA fires have dominated the news this week. And there's talk in the State House about how Vermont can avoid a similar disaster. Not only a fire disaster, but also the perhaps expected annual flood as well. What can Vermont do to mitigate the damage, which apparently LA did just a terrible job of equipping themselves to fight a natural disaster that was completely expected. Now Vermont is now facing what appear to be annual floods. What is Vermont doing for this? And forest fires in Vermont, we may think that we're like immune from forest fires, but last year there actually were quite a few. And anytime there's any real drought in Vermont, you start seeing forest fires. You look up on Spruce Peak and Elmore Mountain and other places in Vermont, you see these towers up there. Those aren't there just for looks. Those are real fire towers. They were erected 100 years ago because they're just huge forest fires in the state, clear-cutting much of Vermont's timber. So that's a story we're going to be talking about. Also, we will be talking about, Paul and Mike and I were all there firsthand this week, the new vibe and the new leaders at the Vermont State House. But our top story is a gag order against the police chief of the city of Burlington, leveled by Progressive Mayor Emma Mulvaney-Stanak.
Can I stop you right there, Guy?
Yes, you can.
What's a gag order?
Nope.
A gag order.
I'm just
Can't talk,
asking.
yeah.
Maybe
Well,
people
no,
don't know.
it's a good
Maybe
que-
they
it's a
don't
good question.
know.
Okay.
It is a good
What's a
question.
gag order?
Well, good question. A gag order is when a judge or a senior official tells someone who they think they have authority to do so, say, you can't talk about this.
Okay.
They basically said, Emma Mulvaney-Stanak, the progressive mayor of Burlington, told Jon Murad, the Burlington police chief, and really all the police, you will not make any public statements unless you put them in writing first and you clear them with my office. And of course, what inspired this was there's this guy, Michael Reynolds, who has more than 50 convictions, more than 1,800 police encounters.
That's him on the right there, folks, just on the screen.
Wait.
What
Not
kind
me.
of?
I just pulled up an image. No, not you.
Oh, not me.
I just
Okay,
pulled up
different person.
an image of this. I'm sorry, his name, the criminal from
Michael Reynolds.
Yes,
good.
I have a picture of both Mulvaney-Stanak there on the left and Michael Reynolds on the right.
And where do I see that? Would that be on Facebook?
Well, if you were watching, you could watch it on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, but I just pulled it up on the screen
Okay.
here so people have
right.
just a quick image of what we're talking about.
Yeah. All right, good. Yeah, Michael Reynolds. And of course, he's not the only one like this. The revolving door, the catch and release. And the latest thing he did was he assaulted some police, he assaulted some hospital workers, some first responders. And the police chief, Jon Murad, was saying, this guy is beating up my cops. He's beating up hospital workers. And he just keeps on he gets arrested, he gets sent to court, they release him again and again and again. And he said, this has got to stop. And he's suggesting a habitual offender. But the mayor apparently seems to be a little bit more concerned with protecting Michael Reynolds, this serial offender, than allowing her police chief to do his job, which is protecting his folks, his cops from attack, and also protecting the residents of the city of Burlington. So that was a big story in today's Chronicle. It was broken by Mike Donahue, the outstanding police reporter, publishes Vermont News First in many different newspapers, and on Facebook. You can read him there, and we republish most of his work. And he broke an updated story this afternoon. Paul, do you remember, and Mike, do you remember the Emma Mulvaney-Stanak's meal train story?
How could I ever forget that story, Guy?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
she tried to apply for it, right? And it was not very tasteful among her critics.
Well, kind of. Someone set up some free meals for her and her family. Her and her, who, since they make like more than $250,000, you know, they got to get their food somehow. And it didn't go over very well with anyone. And they so Mike Donahue would call her, and she basically ended up saying, "Don't call me. You know, just forget you have my cell phone number. Don't call me."
Is that what she
She
said?
doesn't really know how the
Yeah,
press works,
that's-
does she?
Yeah,
That's not an option.
her idea of press relations is, I will talk to you when I want to. I will
Right.
come on your camera and say what I want to. But so she did have a press availability today. Had one today, or maybe it was yesterday.
I'll go to
I
it.
forget which. Well, no.
Mulvaney, I'll come for you.
But see, the thing is, it wasn't. We weren't told about it. Neither was Mike Donahue. Neither, for that matter, was 7 Days, which is really now the de facto newspaper for Burlington. And these were news reporters that were reporting on her, and especially in the meal train and everything, very fairly, very accurately, and not at all to the satisfaction of Mayor Mulvaney-Stanak. So other media were told, but her communications person, her full-time communications person, somehow did not reach out to everyone. Yes, Paul.
I just want to read a quote from the story today that we published. This is her words. All press releases to be issued by the Burlington Police Department shall be sent to the mayor's office for approval prior to issuance of the release by Chief of Police or designee. Mulvaney-Stanak.
Wait a second. That's illegal. Mulvaney, you're probably going to watch this. That is illegal. You can't do that. I mean, right? Am I not right?
What are you saying?
You can't just tell another part of your city government that you can't talk to the press. I'm sure Mulvaney crossed the line on here, right? Am I not wrong to say that?
I'm
She's
wondering
gonna get in
about
trouble.
that, Mike, because technically the chief of police is appointed by the mayor. The mayor is elected by the people, and the chief of police is appointed by the mayor. So the chief of police works for the mayor. So one could say that in an official capacity, she's basically telling an employee, I don't want you talking to the press. And that's not necessarily out of bounds. What is out of bounds is when she has city workers who are being beaten up,
Right.
and public safety is being compromised, and her main concern seems to be, I don't like that he's talking to the press. I want to control everything.
And John Murad takes an oath to the state and national constitution. He doesn't take an oath to Mulvaney-Stanak. So I don't see the ground she's standing on here, but I think that it speaks for itself.
Let me just add a little bit more context to this, too. She says, in the event that a Burlington Police Department determines that a press release must be issued on an emergency basis to communicate critical information to the public in urgent situations such as a missing person, alerts, or evacuation warnings, the following protocol shall be observed, which is what I think the writer of our story referred to as wiggle room, maybe. There is a little bit of wiggle room here, meaning there are instances where maybe they wouldn't have to go through the mayor. So, like, I will say, and I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate here. I hate that phrase. Just to be clear, it's one of my least.
Because you'd rather not advocate for the devil.
I'd really
if
rather
possible.
would not if I could not. But just to argue her case,
sure.
right? Maybe she feels as if there are. And I'm not defending her. I'm not, but I'm kind of trying to. There are unneeded issues that are created for her staff, the city as a whole, by information that's getting out there without her first knowing about it. And maybe she just wants to know about it first. Maybe she wants to see, okay, what are you guys going to tell the press? And what maybe we should be communicating first before you guys go directly to the press.
Except that she then says it will only be released after we have given approval. In other words, she wants the veto over it.
I get that. I can see.
You know she's not North Korea, right?
It's very. There's a phrase that I would use. You know, I don't know.
Fascism.
It's maybe it's a little bit. Yeah, I mean it's
funny that you should use that word, Mike, because Karen Rowell, who's a Burlington resident, wrote an op-ed in the Chronicle this morning, and see, this story gets even more absurd. This statement by Mulvaney-Stanak was written on January 8th, was issued on January 9th, yesterday. January 9th is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. So,
oh boy.
So Karen Rowell writes, this is to a letter to Mayor Stanak, Mulvaney-Stanak. This is how you mark Law Enforcement Appreciation Day? Really? Your authoritarian arrogance is preventing you from the shame you should feel over this. You have again put your dictatorial inclinations on full display. Dictators are not leaders, Emma. People who protect the public and allow thoughts and ideas they do not espouse are leaders. You, Emma, are no leader.
We were on to her before she came to power. I remember you sending me a few stories to write on her. And right away, we were kind of looking at her public statements back before she became governor and won the election. We were getting some red flags and some hints that this was to come. Although I wouldn't have guessed it would have gone this far. I really, even all that we've seen in Vermont and at the State House, I feel like this is a new level. Mulvaney has gone into some territory that even her own party hasn't quite gotten to yet. That's saying a lot.
I would actually agree with that. I was surprised when I saw this yesterday. I don't know. I think maybe I'm trying to think of where I saw it first. Maybe it was Christopher Aaron Felker had shared it on X, and I remember I read it and I thought, like, does this mean what I think it does? Like, whoa, this seems like a little crazy. But I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised, but
sounds like something out of North Korea.
I'm surprised, but I'm not that surprised. Are you, Guy?
And your wife is from South Korea, so
Yeah,
you know
so
North Korea.
I spent 2 years, 20 miles from the northern border, from the most militarized border in the world. We heard, I mean, there's not a lot of press out of there, but this sounds like something you would hear from north of the Korean border, not in Burlington, Vermont. Wow, and this is the Progressive Party. A lot of irony in that term.
So there are some comments here. We have a comment from Big Siege who writes, she cites a manual in her executive order. Kevin Ryan, Mouth Almighty, writes, in Burlington, in the charter, the chief, not the mayor, runs the department. Big Siege replies to that, her only way to enforce this order is to fire the chief. Unless the mayor declares an emergency, the mayor cannot fire the chief without the council. And then Big Siege responds, it's a meaningless order then.
Well, you know why it's meaningless? For one thing, the chief can say, oh, what's she going to do? Fire me? Well, the fact is he has already declared that he's not going to be re-upping his contract.
That's right.
So that's a pretty weak stick she has to hold over his head. Hey, I'm going to fire you because he's out of here anyway.
Well, just for this, he should stay. John, stay. Fight this battle. This is where you're not needed. You're needed wherever you go, but you're needed most here. I'm calling publicly right now. This is your fight here. I think this is the moment when you need to come back in the press and say, nope, because of Mulvaney-Stanak, I'm going to stay. I think you should say that.
Well, it is interesting, though, when you do piece all this together, right? You have him, he's on his way out. So, I don't know, people sometimes when they leave a job or they leave a post of some sort, they like to sprinkle information out there and you know, what do they have to lose, right? So if he's maybe putting out press releases that she finds to be unfavorable of the regime, then maybe I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. But it's just a little bit like, what are you doing? I don't know. Maybe there's probably something to that. Like, he's on his way out, and he probably is putting stuff out there. Like, you know, I don't know, Guy, there's been an increase, I would say, especially with this Michael Reynolds is his name.
Yes, Michael Reynolds.
There's been an increase in people paying attention and asking questions like, hey, what the heck's going on with this? Like, I mean, even people asking me, like, why does this guy have more than 1,000 run-ins with the police?
Well, and here,
how does that happen?
I can't even say it without laughing.
We've got to expand this, too. This is not just Emma Mulvaney-Stanak. Chittenden County Prosecutor Sarah George, in part of the Fair and Just Prosecution Organization, funded by Medal of Freedom winner George Soros.
Nope.
Yes, indeed. So she has come out and said, you know, really, she completely agrees with the gag order, because where this started was Josh O'Hara, who is Reynolds' lawyer, asked a judge, I want a gag order.
What's their logic?
Because what the lawyer is saying is that this could prejudice Reynolds' ability to get a fair trial if, quote unquote, everyone in Burlington, because of all that great mass media in Burlington, if everyone in Burlington and every potential juror knows here's what Murad is saying, then maybe he couldn't get a fair trial. And now, so you would expect a defense attorney to say something like that. However, the prosecutor, the person whose job it is to prosecute Michael Reynolds, said, I wholeheartely concur with the defense lawyer's idea. We have a brief comment from Tim who can't be heard, so you better move in here a little closer. Okay, what's up?
Just a thought, which is rather than put a gag order out, you could always, move the venue.
Well, yes.
District. However, that would mean not having Sarah George as your prosecutor.
Oh, yeah, and she probably doesn't want that.
I would add the elephant in the room. Murad was commenting on his public record That is
Right.
his actions. He did those things first, then Murad commented on him. It didn't happen the other way around. Murad didn't comment and say he did those things and then they happened.
Right.
No, he did these things and then Murad commented on them. This is a complete defiance of logic. I could see my professor at Seton Hall in the logic class saying, you know?
So that's true. What really all the chief was doing was mentioning his very
Public
extensive
record.
more than 50 convictions. Yeah, hello. So, okay, so we'll see where this all goes. Now,
I just
Go ahead,
have
Paul.
a quick question for you, Guy. Maybe you know the answer to this question. I know Sarah George, she's a member of the Emerge group. Is Emma Mulvaney-Stanak a member of the Emerge?
Probably.
what's Emerge?
Emerge is...
Marriage Vermont. They're one of
Well,
the...
I asked Paul.
It's okay, Mike can tell me. Maybe he knows a little bit better. Mike, what's the answer to that question?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, probably going to say the same thing. They're just an activist. Well, not just. They are an activist organization for left-wing political causes, generally, you know, LBGT. I'm not going to try it. But anyway, that you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think it's I guess maybe I think it's more so women trying to get involved in politics. I think.
The Democratic Party
Okay, so
is
all right.
it's their sort of recruitment and training arm.
Oh, I met one of them yesterday. I actually, to be fair, I had a very friendly conversation with one of them, and I totally forgot her name. But in the audience section, she said she's going to run in 2026.
Okay.
She sounded like a very lovely lady. I did not ask her anything about her policies, but she told me she was there with Emerge Vermont to learn how to run for office, and she was sitting next to me watching while I took my notes.
Speaker Joe Kowinski ran Emerge for quite a while. That was
Okay.
that was sort of her baby for a while.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
let's
interesting.
move on from this.
Sure.
And now, a word from one of our sponsors.
Yeah, why don't we start with Ranmar Corps?
Okay,
Ranmar
we'll
Corp.
go down to Ranmar. Very good. So Ranmar Corp is our longest running sponsor. Owner-operator Randy Rulo of Berlin has been serving central Vermont and surrounding areas with excavation, construction, and real estate services since 1979. They're a local, family-owned company committed to the values of Vermont. Their residential building division, Village Homes, specializes in affordable, energy-efficient, modular, and manufactured home projects. Their family team and skilled craftsmen have decades of experience to complete your project with ease, on time, and on budget. Okay. Thank you, Randy Rulo, Ranmar Corp. Well, our next segment we want to talk about here you know, Paul
Yeah.
and Mike, we're all in the building this week, in the legislature this week, and I would love to know. Well, first, before I ask you what your sort of dominant opinion on sort of how things have changed, I sat down with Patty McCoy, who's the minority leader in the House, Republican minority leader from Pulteney, and has been for quite a while.
Yep, nice lady.
And I asked her, so what is the big difference, and what do you see? And she said, a spirit of consensus, where this growing realization that if anything was going to happen, the majority will have to work with the minority. And Patty, for many years, has been leading a small, shut-out, essentially powerless Republican GOP caucus. And now, wow, have things ever changed? They have a. Let's take a look, Paul, at the Republican House story that we ran on the chairs.
Sure.
And I'm going to spool that up also. And just so folks know, all four of us have committees that we will be watching, we will be especially watching. So when you hear us speaking on different subjects, it'll be in large part because we have been we have our own beats. Tim
That's
will be
great.
covering corrections and institutions. Mike will be covering the education and healthcare committees. Paul, tell me more about what you will be covering.
Yeah, I'm going to be covering Senate Natural Resources and Energy, which new chair, Ann Watson, vice chair, Senator Terry Williams, somebody I interviewed this summer.
That's right.
So I'm looking forward to being in that room with him. You know, just full honest disclosure, I think that Senator Terry Williams is just such a great stand-up guy.
Yep.
And there couldn't be, he's a really great mind to have in that room,
He is.
as well as Senator Scott Beck, who was recently elected up in Caledonia County.
Yes.
Yeah, I always mix up Caledonia and Orleans County for some
Amazing.
reason. But pretty cool that those two are going to be in there, as well as Senator Seth Bongartz, which
Seth Bongartz from Bennington
from
County.
Bennington County, who was elected this year.
Yeah.
He actually served in the House and the Senate back in the 1980s.
Yeah, that's right.
So he's got some institutional knowledge, and then he was in I believe the House since 2020 or 2022.
And last year.
Well, and last year, of course, too. So
Yeah.
since then, and then this year recently ran for Senate. So he's a good name in there too. And I feel like I'm missing one. Did I mention them all?
You are, in fact.
Who is it? Oh, Ruth Hardy.
Well, hold on. Natural Resources and Energy.
I believe it's Ruth Hardy.
You could be right, but I'm going to read it to you. Ann Watson, Democrat, Democrat/progressive, mostly Democrat, I think, from
Yeah.
Washington.
I would say so.
Republican Terry Williams, Vice Chair. So Chair Ann Watson, Vice Chair. The Vice Chair of this committee, Terry Williams, Ruth Hardy, Seth Bongartz, and who I mistakenly labeled in my thing here as a Republican. Of course, he's not. He's a Democrat. And Scott Beck.
Yep.
So what you have there, see, this is fascinating because if anything shows how things have changed, it's this committee. Because last year, when that committee was the bottleneck for any good legislation, or I should say any legislation that would promote housing in rural areas and that maybe could slow down the Global Warming Solutions Act and all that. No, that was the committee that approved the Clean Heat Standard, the Global Warming Solutions Act, and basically just put a stranglehold on any rural housing, because Chris Bray was the chair, and from Madison County, and he was voted out of office.
That's right.
And that was the only committee in the Senate that had no Republicans on it, not a one. And some of the Republicans said, well, this isn't fair. You should have at least one Republican. And I remember having a conversation with my old friend Dick Mazza, who was sort of a centrist Democrat. He said to me, well, you know, seriously, if the Republicans want to get a representation in every committee, they should get a few more of themselves elected. Well, they did that, didn't they? 6 more Republicans in the Senate. So they now have 5-member committee, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And so that committee is going to be very interesting to watch. And the reason that's so important, did either of you read Rob Roper's column on the Clean Heat Standard?
Yeah.
I started to read
Paul,
it today.
tell me about the gist of that.
I believe the phrase he referred to was circling the wagons, which
Yes.
it kind of sounds like they're getting ready to, I don't know. Are they? They're like
I was
kinda
confused
rallying
by that too.
They're kind. I
was
was
also
like, does he
confused
mean
by the
they're
headline.
rallying behind the idea? I mean, it seems like they're kind of like giving up on the idea. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I was a little confused by the headline on that as well. But in any case,
I think maybe his point was the 3 leading members of that committee, the chair, the vice chair, and what they call the ranking member, which is sort of like the number 3 person, you might say. They're all strong climate hawks.
Yeah.
They're all people who have been pushing hard for the Clean Heat Standard. Laura Sibilia, Kathleen James, the chair, and Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury.
Well, this is in the House end anyway. That's what you're talking
That's
about.
right.
Yeah. No, that's what Rob's article is all about too. I mean, it's definitely they're going to come out with something that's resembles the Clean Heat Standard. I think. I mean, I don't know.
I agree. I just don't see where it's going.
Well,
how are they going to push it? Everybody already, it's dead on arrival. It's dead on arrival. I'll tell them it straight to the camera. Go ahead.
well, we don't know. I mean, things could change. Things do
I
change.
don't see it.
But I don't see it either. I think that, if you really take a hard look at, let's just say Governor Scott's governorship, his being the governor, right? I would argue that his whole purpose and battle really was this whole clean heat standard, and then eventually, responding with a little bit of a pushback from the new VT GOP or moderate centrist grouping of people, candidates, whatever you want to call it. I mean, a lot of them happen to be Republicans, and some of them are more independent-minded folk anyway. I mean, not to say Republicans aren't independent-minded, but point is I think if you look at his whole career here and what we're going to get to the end of in this next 2 years, is at the end of this, my guess is for his vision as well as a lot of the bigger players behind what represents the governorship, the money ultimately, and the industry, the clean heat standard is something that they don't want. Very, very obviously. That's people in Vermont. There's also, outside of Vermont, there's national agendas where this is being pushed in other states like Massachusetts, Connecticut, where the same type of ideas are coming through. But within 2 years now, I think that at the end of Governor Scott's reign, that's assuming he doesn't continue to run, which I think he's done. I'm not sure, but I think he's done.
Whoa.
I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
Bold statement there.
I think he's done. I think he's done after this next 2
Rodgers
years.
is ascending, so there's
And
that.
I think the point of what I'm saying here is, like, his whole battle has been this battle, and if you look at what he's made it through, including 2 years of a supermajority, they never let this happen. They did not let this clean heat standard thing happen. Make of it what you will. I know he drives an electric truck, but he comes from a racing background, man. He's a Thunder Road guy. He's from Barre, and he represents a whole class of people in this state that rely on motor fuel and oil and heating fuel and motor oil, like this kind of stuff. So he's played the game very well, but I think that the clean heat standard is, whatever they come up with, it's not going to be the same, and they're probably not going to be able to pass it, ever.
It needs to have the essence of transferring wealth from an established and affordable form of energy, which is our oil, natural gas, nuclear, etc., and they want to mandate it over to, I'm thinking of the bigger picture with the Global Warming Solutions Act, but if we're talking about the clean heat standard, then we're talking about mandating from the fuel oils that we buy. I just had some delivered today from Irving Oil, which is affordable-ish. It is what it is, but in any case, the new technologies, they require subsidies for a reason. And they have mixed performance records in Vermont also for a reason. I'm talking about, of course, the cold climate heat pumps that, I mean, I've been in homes with them. They do work. They definitely work, but the amount.
Do they work when it's really cold, Mike?
That's another issue. And also, they're just not economical. That's the point. That's why we have to subsidize them, which is the whole purpose of the law. And to me, it sounds like fascism.
No, I agree, and I just want to go back to the whole purpose of the question here, where we've been going with this guy, and as if there's been a vibe shift in the State House. I think that, again, go back to 2017 to now, what will be 8 years of Governor Scott, I believe, or maybe is it a full 10 technically? It will be a full 10 years.
I'm on track.
With him as governor.
Since 2016.
Okay,
so
we're
the
closing on a
full
decade.
vibe shift over this 10-year period has been, okay, we've now made it through this crazy period of like identity politics and COVID and the flooding, whatever we want to make of that, which we'll talk about that later. But I feel like we've made it through to the other side of this argument, and the oil, gas, all that kind of stuff doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. And I don't see oil and gasoline ever going anywhere. I think it's always going to be part of the American economy and ultimately the global economy. And we're silly if we think that we're not going to be using that here. Meanwhile, in China and India and Russia and all these major countries, Brazil, right? I mean, hello, they're still going to be burning gasoline and oil. You think you're going to save the planet, Vermont? No. So back to the question of the vibe shift, though, we asked Jill Krasinski yesterday. I asked her anyway. First few days back, this was in a press conference she hosted real quick right after the governor's address, after swearing in again. We asked her, so first few days back, do you think there's been an attitude shift or a vibe shift in the State House? And she told me quite quickly, And I said, if you could just describe it in a few words, what would you say? And she says, I'm feeling hopeful and optimistic.
No.
Hey,
Okay.
what do you mean, Mike? That's a good answer. What do you
I
what do you not
guess.
like about that?
It's a little canned.
Well, it was definitely a little canned and a little like, okay, well, that's fine.
But it was probably the right word. Sometimes the canned answer is the accurate answer. I guess I can see
Well,
that.
when she said it, it had come right after Guy asked her this question. So I'm going to show the video here, folks.
for it.
Please tell me if you can't hear us. Hopefully you can hear us. The sound here on this video, you should be able to, but we're just going to play it for you. Let's see what you think. This is Guy asking Speaker of the House, Drill Krasinski, a question yesterday.
Different taxes without diving in deep. I think, again, what is critical is we need to make sure that what we put into law is working. And if it's not, we have to make changes. But again, I just want to stress that our focus this session is focused on education and property taxes. And that is where we need to put our time and energy. And I think that impacts all committees around this chamber, because it impacts healthcare, it impacts housing, it impacts so many other places. And so again, that is going to be where our focus is.
Top, Paul?
You want me to start that over again?
Yeah.
You want to hear that again?
Yeah, the whole thing.
Sure. Go back to it. Hold on a second.
So there's a fear, Jill, that sure, you're going to hold the property taxes in line, but it's just going to be a big tax hike somewhere else. What do you say to the concerns about that?
I haven't heard those concerns, and that's obviously not something that's on my agenda, to just pass different taxes without diving in deep. I think, again, what is critical is we need to make sure that what we put into law is working. And if it's not, we have to make changes. But again, I just want to stress that our focus this session is focused on education and property taxes. And that is where we need to put our time and energy. And I think that impacts all committees around this chamber, because it impacts healthcare, it impacts housing, it impacts so many other places. And so again, that is going to be where our focus is.
So there's a fear, Jill.
Sound should be back on with us, and I just can't help but to laugh because of the way that Guy asked that question. He's just like, so, there's this thing, and what do you say about that? And she just so bluntly, and she just, I don't think she really expected that question from you, Guy, to be quite honest. I don't know why she would.
I did get a bit of a frown.
She did. She wasn't really happy when you asked that question. Yeah. You can kind of see it on her face. Like,
one of the things but the substance of it, though, Paul. What do you think about her answer?
I think she's just giving a canned corn response. Like, here you go. Yeah. This is it. I hope that she means what she says. She wants to not increase the cost of living in Vermont. Basically, that's basically what you're asking, right?
Is it credible that no one in her circle of discussion has been talking about raising other taxes in addition to the property tax?
I just don't think that that's the case. I feel like that's all that anyone is wondering, right? Okay, so if we're not going to solve this education funding crisis this way, then how are we going to solve it? Where are we going to make up the funds?
Well, it's a fact that the Education Association, the Vermont NEA, has been talking about going to the income tax instead, maybe in addition to the property tax. Okay, yes, we need property tax relief, so let's raise the income tax. But the problem with that, is that if you look at something the Vermont Chamber of Commerce put out this week, and it's on Vermont Daily Chronicle right now, Vermont has the third highest state tax bill in the nation. Number one is, of all places, North Dakota. And you think, conservative North Dakota? Well, they tax fracking there. So there's a gigantic amount of revenue that comes from frack gas. Well, and as one person said to me this week, maple syrup just doesn't bring in that much revenue, So
it might taste good.
Right.
It might taste a little better than fracking oil, I guess, but.
Right. So, and the number two state is Hawaii, which is, they have their own reasons for it.
Right.
They just have to have wicked high taxes. But number three in in total dollars, not just percentage of income, but total dollars that Vermont taxpayers pay, we're number 3 in the nation. So
Seems kind of odd.
seriously, do we have any more bandwidth for taxes? If anything, that's an argument for people to be leaving and for people thinking about where to move to not move here. And so did not hear an awful lot of discussion or commitment to cutting costs.
I was just going to say that. I think that's the elephant in the room. Is that anybody knows anything about economics and running a business or a school in this case, or an education budget? You got 2 columns, expenditures on one side and your income on the other. All I heard from her answer was about income. You have a whole other column you can adjust to that is just as effective if you can bring your expenditures down, which brings me thinking to Ben Kinsley over at Campaign for Vermont. He was on the morning drive, I believe, about a week ago. And he was talking about one of the, I don't know if it was their study or someone else's study, but in any case, the result of the study was they looked at Vermont's student to staff ratio. Notice I didn't say teacher, I said staff. It's the, depending on your perspective, it is the most, the lowest in the nation or highest in the nation. We have, what is it, like for every 4
41.
students, we have a staff. And the next highest state in the nation, it's like not even close. It's
Right.
like 6. So it's not even like there's Vermont at the top and then immediately all these others. This is a big gap and then all the others. So, and I think Ben Kinsley, you know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my interpretation of what I thought I was hearing him saying was, this is where there's some, I don't even know if low-hanging fruit is the right way to say it. This is like the elephant in the room that can be addressed, should be addressed, and I even think they put a number on it. It was like $400 million that they could save if they just, what was it like, if they could just change that number by like 1 student or 1.5 students. I don't want to, I don't want to carve it all in stone, and because I'm going by memory here, but the gist of it was we have that dynamic, and it is definitely driving up the cost.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks,
So.
Mike. Paul, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I had I had a number of really interesting conversations this week, but I had a really great conversation with Senator Randy Brock, and he had
Tell us about Randy Brock.
Yeah, Senator Randy Brock. He's a senator from Franklin County. I believe he's a former military guy, served in the Army. I'm sorry if I'm wrong.
Businessman.
Business background, and that's exactly what I want to talk about. Is he, when he, just as a quick story here, when he first came into this new session, he's got 2 books that he's asking everybody in the GOP caucus to read, especially the Senate caucus. And one of them, I believe, the book is just called Parkinson's Law. I don't remember the name of the other one. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, but I don't. But Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law, if you're not familiar with Parkinson's Law, it's the law, it's the adage that work will will expand to fill the time allotted for its completion. And he was kind of, what he was doing was drawing a little bit of an analogy here with the state of Vermont and the education system. And ultimately, you could draw this parallel to many instances in Vermont's top-heavy state government. But basically what he's trying to say is, like, we have all these positions for people, and it seems to be more about the adults than it is the children themselves, for people to have job security. And that just doesn't really make any sense, because the purpose of an education system is, yes, sure, to provide jobs, to provide a purpose for someone, good paying jobs with health care, all this stuff. But the purpose is not that. The purpose is to educate kids. That's the point. It's to educate kids and to give them the best opportunities and best outcomes possible. And we're not even doing that either.
No, not at all.
So what is going on here? And basically what he's arguing is that the system has become almost incentivized to expand into this Parkinson's Law form of government. And it's not just the school system. And he also shared just kind of a quick story with me, and I think that this is ultimately where I think many things are going in this state. Is he was in charge of a lot of people. He ran a business, and I don't know the exact details of the business. Maybe you do, Guy. But he told me at one point he had to cut something like $20 million from his budget within a period of 48 hours. And in that 48 hours, he did that, and that included cutting some people, which I don't know if you've ever had to fire anybody. I haven't necessarily, but it's not fun when people leave or whatever. It's
Not
hard.
yet, Paul.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's not fun when people leave or they quit, or it's a tough thing to go through. But he did. He had to get rid of employees, and almost all of them came back to him at one point and actually thanked him because there were problems within the company. It wasn't working for a reason. There was too many people for not enough problems or not enough work.
Right.
And when that's the situation, it can become a very toxic environment where people create problems and people or people literally create problems. They're looking for problems. They're looking for a reason to justify their existence.
Right.
And we
Good
all
point.
want that. We all want
point.
a purpose. It's what makes us happy, That's what gives us a reason to live. But I just thought it was a really interesting thing, and I honestly, we got to get Senator Randy Brock in here at some point and let him flesh that out a little bit more because I think he's onto something there.
He's a great guy.
So I want to talk about another sponsor.
Oh.
We are so happy that Procter Gas, the propane people, owned and operated by our good friend and supporter, Judy Taranovich. And that team at Procter Gas has more than 100 years of combined experience in the propane industry and is dedicated to bringing the best possible service, products, and customer care to residents throughout Vermont. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about the fires out in LA. And wow, the problems out there. Some of them are natural and some of them are man-made. They certainly have drought, they have high winds, they have habitat encroaching on wilderness, and that's all just a recipe for a fire, right? But they also have apparently some terrible mismanagement of their city fire department, and hydrants missing. There's no water to draw on, and probably I wrote a very blunt editorial this week.
You did, Guy.
I did.
I was like, whoa, Guy.
Yeah.
They sent it to Ukraine. The buddy.
No, it was don't preach to me,
Oh,
California.
okay. All right. Oh,
right.
you were
Because
that one.
here's California is saying, oh, Vermont, everyone else, follow our lead and get rid of your EV cars because we need to save the world from carbon emissions. And here's a state that these big forest fires produce as much carbon as the entire industry of the nation of Germany does. It's
Wow.
a gigantic
Wow.
amount of carbon emissions. And those trees that are burning and emitting all sorts of carbon into the air, what do you think is nature's number one carbon emissions reducer?
That's right.
That would be a tree.
Good point, Guy.
So, and so you would think that California would be looking at this as this is the greatest disaster for the world, and we should feel ashamed that we are allowing these forest fires because they are allowing them. They're for two reasons. One is that they have a water control policy that basically says, well, there's a few endangered snails or whatever living in California waters, and we can't just let a lot of water come down from the dams up in the mountains, up in the hills, and to run it down into the valleys for water and for fire control. We can't do that. Well, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And the other thing is that they have forest fire policies, or almost promoting forest fires, because good forest management is when you clear out underbrush. And the people like Bruce Shields up in Hyde Park, who's a forest expert, and anyone who really knows about forestry, have been telling me that California has this, to use Rob Roper's expression, wackadoodle policy that says, no, we can't cull out the undergrowth. All the dead trees that follow, they're basically methane bombs waiting to explode. No, we can't do that. Can't cull them out.
They realize that
And-
Earth is 4 billion years old, right? This has been going on for a while.
Indeed. But they won't do that because they have their own primeval forest, and this is the way the Indians did it, kind of thing. Although, as Tim was just saying, that's not how they did it. The Indians actually had controlled burns.
The native, especially in the Northeast, when Europeans first came over, they made broad mention of the park-like setting within the forest because everything was spaced out properly. The undergrowth was cleared away because it's better for the animals
True.
that they needed.
Huh,
It's more manageable.
right? All
And
those,
it's
all
nice
those
to look
nice
at.
shoots for the deer to eat. Yeah.
Also, with mention of the snail thing, so what they're saying is that you have to have that dam in place because before that dam was in place, that water was flowing down towards that snail habitat unimpeded. Those snails are apparently only existing because
The dam.
human beings.
Oh, let's see.
It's kind of ironic.
But they're saying that's okay.
Uh,
So again, it's another double standard issue
Yeah.
when it comes to environmental policy. And
huh.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Tim.
Yeah. Wow.
Tim knows a lot.
Tim does. He's got a wealth of information.
So anyway, that's L.A. That's California. What's Vermont doing? What is Vermont doing about forest fire potential? You know, they call Vermont the asbestos forest, but that is so not true. Mike, you might have written a few of those stories last year about some forest fires happening in southern Vermont, and all it takes is a little bit of drought and some people setting fires where they shouldn't, and pretty soon you have a major forest fire.
Well,
Yes, Paul.
I just want to add quickly. You mentioned you're not really sure why they're redirecting the water in Northern California because of a snail. It's actually the smelt, which is like it's a very well. It's I just want to be exact because people,
No,
the
that's
environmental
good.
folk out there.
I was thinking of the snail darter, but yeah, it was the
RF,
smelt.
the RFK juniors of the world out there
Yeah.
that are listening. I mean, it's a concern. You know, you
Yeah.
want to keep ecology healthy and strong. And this is the smelt here, and it is kind of an important part of the ecosystem there.
Yeah.
But
it wouldn't be there
Yeah.
if it weren't for the dam anyway.
well, and that's what you got to. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, the water flow before we were there didn't
Right.
affect this, so why does it suddenly now? It just seems like a complete lie to me.
Yeah.
And the people that I know out there that live in California, they say overall it's just mismanagement, just complete mismanagement. And
right.
I don't mean to interrupt your point talking about Vermont because
No,
I believe that's
that's a
why
good
we're
one.
having a lot of the flooding too. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons, but
Right.
there's definitely something there.
So the good news, I guess, is that the Agency of Natural Resources, state government in general, they are thinking, okay, fire. Let us not be the next LA. And in terms of how we manage this. So they're working on it, and they will be reporting at some point to the legislature on here's what we're doing regarding fire. And when they do, we'll let you know. The other thing, perhaps the more realistic problem, and we know it's going to happen again, just the way in California, they know the Santa Ana winds are going to come, they know some fire is going to come, they should have planned for it, right? Well, floods in Vermont. We know those are going to happen. This building was probably, Tim, you live in Barre, was this part of this building underwater at some point?
it may have been. I was at the deepest water.
Oh, that's right.
I
So
was
you weren't
able
going
to
anywhere.
leave. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it,
We're
in fact, there are
about
still some
4 or 5
sandbags
feet
out
underwater
front.
where I was. So
There's some sandbags out front. So I would imagine that, they did have some in this building. So the question is,
certainly
what is the state going to be doing to anticipate, okay, you fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, well, fool me 3 times, and that's trouble.
Paul, I have a question.
Yeah.
Or go ahead. Oh, you were about to say something.
We have about 4 minutes, guys.
Yep.
I wanted to make a quick comment about how things happened this year in Barre. It was definitely mismanagement which caused the flood here, and not in Montpelier, which is frankly at a greater risk geologically and water table.
What was the mismanagement?
Mismanagement was that the drainage system was not flushed out after the first flood.
Oh.
That's why most of the flooding was coming from the other direction, at least initially, and it was coming up through the basements.
Wow.
Oddly enough, when we almost later on this summer had possibly a little bit of flooding, it looked like it might happen. That morning, they finally got at the drainage system, and they cleaned it out.
Wow.
And that, I think, is one of the few things that prevented more flooding here. And I've talked to several business owners who have been pretty much left out to dry by the federal, state, and local governments on that. And that was completely avoidable.
Wow, that's interesting fact. So our final sponsor, we got 3 sponsors, folks, and we may have more. Yeah. I believe it's one day in July?
Yeah.
Okay.
Love their artwork, by the way.
I'm sorry?
I just pulled up some of their artwork for the show today, and just shout out to Dan Cunningham and the team. That's some just very, very aesthetically pleasing Vermont business artwork right there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what a fabulously successful and fast-growing company. One Day in July, the Burlington-based investment firm, founded by Bennington native Dan Cunningham, provides low-fee, diversified index investment management and fiduciary financial advice for individuals, families, and institutions. Go to onedayinjuly.com to learn how to reduce fees, improve performance, and avoid behavioral errors with their proprietary simulator tool and educational resources. You know, we're all, conservatives in general, are all about taking care of ourselves, not expecting government to take care of us. One of the ways that we can do that is by investing money well. Right? We have, a certain amount of money, and however much we have, we can invest that somewhere to its maximum return in Vermont-based businesses. And that is a way that, with all the bad stuff that's happening in the economy, there are things that we can do, and good, smart investment is one of those things. So, Paul, it's 4:59.
Yeah.
Have we gone over everything?
Well, I'm pretty sure we've discussed pretty much everything that we've wanted to talk about today.
The gag order, the State House,
yeah.
the floods, the fires.
Yeah, well, I would just add, as we've been talking on and on here, I do find it very interesting that a lot of these same climate policies that we see in this Vermont State House, and really the ideology as a whole that we've seen in the last 10 years, a lot of it comes from California.
Yes.
Which has been on fire for
Yes.
the last
Literally on
10
fire.
years.
Why do we want to emulate that?
Well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like it almost,
Or Germany.
you kind of draw you could make the George Soros connection too with the state's attorney or the district attorney, and you could really, if you wanted to dive into renewable energy industry and where all this stuff is coming from and the connections and this volatile weather that we're seeing, I find it to be very interesting that both of these states, Vermont included, we must act on climate change because it's going to flood again, right? Which is kind of like the same. It's the same in California. The fires are going to keep burning unless we get rid of all gas-powered vehicles. Meanwhile, Teslas are blowing up and lighting on fire. I'm just kidding, but just being a little facetious.
So,
but the point is, it's like where is this coming from? Where is this ideology being motivated from, and why, right? And did we just see in the state of Vermont a pushback, really strong pushback against this?
Did.
I think I would refer to it as really a globalist vision for the future, and Vermonters, in my opinion, they're not buying it. So,
okay. Well, thank you, team.
absolutely,
being
Guy.
here.
Thank you.
Mike, and Tim, and Paul, and this is Guy Page, your co-host, and we'll see you next Friday.